like to ask John Taylor to kickstart this session by giving us a quick update on the law reform. This is something that has really moved forward in this year, in the past few years, and is a strategic enabler of trade finance digitalization across the board. So, John, please.
Well, thank you very much, Massimo, and it's a real pleasure to speak to you. I'm going to keep the presentation extremely short because it's more important, I think, that we get on to the other topics that our panelists are specialists in. But it is important that we address the legal issues of digitalization. Perhaps I should step back and just remind us all just how important the work we are doing is. When you consider that the World Trade Organization tells us that there's about $30 trillion worth of trade, global trade, every year. 30 trillion. It doesn't need much more to add to say how important the role that we are playing collectively as banks or as fintechs supporting the trade finance and payment initiative. But, and indeed, most of us are conducting our efforts electronically and digitally, except that there are various barriers that have existed to electronic trade documents in the past. I'm not going to go over all the barriers. We don't have time. You know them better than I do. But one of the main barriers is that the law relating to key trade documents that you all use in your day-to-day work, the law has not permitted those documents to be as effective in an electronic form as they are in the paper form. And I've indicated in the slide, there should be slides. Excuse me. There we go. Thank you very much. Excellent. In the second bullet point in bright red, I've indicated a few of the documents that you might be very familiar with that have had effectiveness only if they are in paper form. And I'm not going to bore you with the reasons. You can ask me questions afterwards. But if they're in paper form, they've been very effective. But if they're in electronic form, they're not as effective unless parties have agreed among themselves that the electronic form is effective. But it required the parties to agree among themselves for these documents to have the effect that a paper document would have. And this has been so for centuries. But certainly in the last 150 years, the law has stepped in and basically, country by country, has indicated this lack of effectiveness. The good news is in the final bullet point, the law is changing. And it's been an initiative of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law to develop a model law on so-called electronic transferable records. And each of the documents that I've indicated in red are electronic transferable records. And to the extent to which individual countries have passed laws that are aligned with, consistent with, this model law that, or Melita as it's called, as it's known as, to the extent to which individual countries are passing laws to be aligned with this, they will solve the problem. And we wanted, as panelists here, we wanted this legal issue, in a sense, to be understood at the beginning. It forms a backdrop, because if you don't have legal effectiveness, if you can't enforce the obligation either to get the goods or to get the payment for the goods, I mean, where does trade go? Where does trade go? On the next slide, please, I'd mentioned the good news that the law is changing. But where is it changing? Well, here's a brief summary of where it's actually changed. Now, those on the left-hand side, in the orange, are countries that have aligned their laws. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because some of these countries are not major trading countries. I mean, I don't need to identify which are not major trading companies.
For sure.
But some are very major. You're absolutely right. Singapore, I mean, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, the trade arranged through the UAE, but more particularly, of course, the big one is the United Kingdom, because I'm informed that English law governs about 70% of trade transactions. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, and I'm not necessarily pushing English law, because what I'm saying is, please, the other countries get cracking and change your laws. This is not a difficult job to change the law. The model law that the UN UNCITRAL has published is about 5 pages long. The English law changes that became effective on September the 20th of just this past year, just 3 months or so ago. The English law, the substantive provisions of change, 4 pages. And that's the length of the statute, which does effectively, it says effectively, if the instrument is in electronic form and it contains the information that you would normally have in the paper form, we will give full legal recognition and effect to this. And if therefore you govern the contract that you have, the trade agreement and the payments agreement, the bill of lading, etc., the instrument itself, govern it by English law, it can be then enforced so long as the courts recognize, of course, English law. That explains also why we are collectively urging all of you to go back home, to the extent to which your countries have not even considered or are not actively considering changing the law. Please have your regulators, please have your legislators consider this. This is not, from a legal point of view, I'm not talking of the other issues which we'll come to. From the legal point of view, this is not complicated, I can assure you. And there are 22, you'll see the countries on the right-hand side. The reform is actually in progress. Good news. A lot of, especially the G7 countries who have committed a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, they all committed to give serious consideration to changing their laws. There are 22 other countries. If I've not mentioned all of them, forgive me. I wanted to keep the slide nice and short. But if you go and have a look at the ICC Digital Standards Initiative Melita tracker, they list the countries. Finally, therefore, I end on a call to action. It's a call to action for governments. It's a call to action for each of your banks. And it's a call to action even, if I may say, for the future leaders here, because I notice that you are going to work this year on digitalization and on sustainability. There are 3 elements that I've listed on here. I'm not going to take further time. You can look at the links that would enable countries to have a roadmap to reform. We've got to build industry-wide acceptance. I don't think among the banks, I don't think there will be much complaint to give or do you really want to have all the problems and issues handling the paper documents? If you do, okay, carry on. But I hope not. And then finally, that you should please, I urge you all to join industry-wide developments that are pushing on this. There are phenomenal groups. ITFA is one good group which is working very hard on this. The ICC, there's a range of groups who are working to achieve digitalization. And that's me on law.
Thank you so much, John, for setting the scene. I think we can definitely see some progress on law reform. But still, we have to acknowledge today, as a recent study from ICC France, less than 1% of the 4 billion digital paper that is produced every year to support trade is digital, is natively digital. So there are still phenomenal challenges ahead of us. And maybe I would like a first quick round with the other panelists, starting from you, Sharon, on this.
And actually, one comment that those 4 billion documents equate to 500,000 trees. So I think, why do we still have paper, right? I think to move away from paper requires transformation. And transformation isn't always easy, right? We know that it's not profitable, it impacts productivity, it impacts turnaround times. We understand, right? But to move away from that, and if we look at the BCG paper, I think all of us remember that picture that they drew of all of the actors and interactions within trade. That requires a systemic change, right, across multiple actors in multiple places. And maybe just to frame things and frame some of the conversation we have, and apologies, I was just on holiday with my daughter, so I had a little bit of time, and she's doing her master's. She's doing her master's in sustainability, and she's looking at transition theory, and she asked me to look at something. And I started getting excited because it started to answer your question, why? Right? Looking at how we moved from sailboats to steamships, right? How technology, social, technical change. And it basically says there are 3 layers. You have the external environment, right? Regulations, market things which are changing. You have at the bottom innovation and technical niches which are happening, which are coming in and looking to see how they can hook onto things and can we expand. And in the middle, you have business as usual. That's your cultural blocks. That's how we do things today. That's how we operate. And the way that you can drive change, you need to create disruption from the top and the bottom. There needs to be change coming in from the top and innovation, which then will help us move away from that paper. And I'm excited personally because I think for the first time we're starting to see those 2 pieces merge.
Excellent. I like the touch on the cultural change as well. Joerg.
Yeah, I mean, trade finance and digitalization is not necessarily a love relationship. This is my observation, because it's sticky business, it is traditional business, and it's complex business. And we know that in order to be successful, we also need global adoption, and we have different parties involved, different parties with different motivations. I mean, besides exporter-importer, we have the banks, we have carriers, we have different authorities. We even have the harbor master somewhere in an emerging market who might prefer to get the paper bill of lading with something on top on it or below, and not a digital e-bill of lading. So it's complex. Maybe this view is a bit too simplistic, but compared with the payments business, I think here it's much easier to agree on certain standardized data formats for the payments business, and trade finance with all the complexity is a challenge. Even during Corona, I would say we have witnessed only a limited adoption of electronic documents. There are some pieces here and there, and of course we have seen a file transfer from SWIFT. We have seen digital signatures being in use now on guarantee deeds as well. But it was not really the big transformation yet. And I mean, the question was, why is the situation as it is, right? And I believe also, I mean, maybe the solutions we saw, some island solutions, digital islands like Marco Polo network, where we were a member, and I still like the idea of Marco Polo very much, but it didn't scale up. It's for the corporates, maybe it's still too complex, or the pressure was not big enough. And then we see in Germany, I think we see the war in the Ukraine, we see supply chain disruption, We see high energy prices. You can read it in the newspaper today that German industry is lacking and I think the only industry in the EU not growing right now. And the motivation for corporates to adopt solutions like Marco Polo network, where they have to accept also a certain rule book, which inherited the URDTT, so the Uniform Rules for Digital Trade Transactions. So that's good. But still, I think the companies right now, they ask for less regulation and not really keen to go through a rule book for one platform with limited, with questionable success chances.
You need scale.
Yeah. So Francesco, maybe you can build a little bit on what Joerg was mentioning, also some of the attempts, there was some progress out there by the industry. We can also learn from the things that were not completely successful, no, we can say.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to you all, thanks to BAFT and thanks to Massimo to be here as Intesa Sanpaolo. It's a good chance to bring our experience in digitalization of trade finance. I start from attempts. Attempts, as mentioned, we all, probably all, lots of bank was on Marco Polo, was on WeTrade and those platforms. And for us was a good experience and a lesson learned. And as said, probably what we need to have those good platform applied for the customer is the MLTR, for example, an initiative like ICC, Digital Standard Initiative, that will bring a common place where all those platforms, WeTrade, for example, and Marco Polo can work together. Regarding what you mentioned, John, here in Italy, we strongly ask to ICC and to create a working group in order to have in Italy the MLTR approved. And then we are working with other banks, with the lawyers, with Luca Castellani, with UniCredit for sure, in order to have probably, I hope, next year, and we already reach our parliament in order to have, to higher the level of attention on this point. And next year we will host the G20, and then probably I hope that we have this law applied in Italy. I mean the application of the model law on electronic transferable record. Talking about this said, let me mention the project that we are with success applying different technology, because we heard and we are probably quite sure that this is not a problem of technology. The problem, the technology is here, APIs, DLT, machine learning, OCR, and just to mention some projects that we are carrying out and that they are using artificial intelligence, a project called Automated Workflow, where internally we are digitalizing the documents. You mentioned a huge number worldwide. Internally, we are more or less talking about millions of documents that we are trying to digitalize. We are succeeding on that. Probably you as Commerzbank, you are doing the same way, and applying the artificial intelligence, the OCR, we are succeeding on that. And the result is that we have a good result in terms of, let me say, controls. The numbers of controls are increasing, and we lower the people that are obliged to control documents and so on. Another point regarding the digitalization is the e-bill of lading. Probably up to 2030, we will have the 100% of the e-bill of lading. And this project allows us to handle e-bill of lading. Taking care about small and medium enterprise, this morning I heard the problem that small and medium enterprise probably have in the past, has now, and in the future. We are supporting 19% of our Italian ecosystem is based on small and medium enterprise. That we develop a platform where customer can find lots of information. Together with our dispositive tools called Inbuilt Trade, we put another tools where the customer can find a lot of information that could be really helpful to face with with the international trade. Last, we are pushing in Italy to have all the digital, all to have our internal domestic guarantees digitalized using this kind of technology. So, just this is not a problem of technology. The problem for us, and probably you agree all, is to have the MLTR approved and to have initiative like the Digital Standard Initiative wider and used by all the banks, and that will success.
Thank you, Francesco. So maybe your point of view as an infrastructure provider, not as a banker.
I think first thing is we should recognize that the transformation into traditional trade finance will be a slow process, not a fast process. So that we should always keep in mind. It will not be very fast because of the complexity, as already mentioned, and you can always see, as we say, at least here in Germany, see the glass half empty or half full. Half empty, certainly, if you look on the Marco Polo was mentioned. Recently, we had Contours, which was shut down. We had Swift made his own experience with the famous trade service utility. In the Deutsche Bank report, in the reason it was mentioned, the application of trade card. I don't know who remembers still trade card, which was a very exciting new form how to do business and trade finance business. And those things all failed, but I would not say they failed. I think for us, or for the community, it should be lessons learned. And there are also very positive examples. You mentioned electronic bill of lading. There has been, so if you look on the electronic bill of lading, of course, there's a statistic which says only 2% of electronic bill of ladings are settled today. If you deep dive a little bit, there is a recent report which I just by occasion have read yesterday, actually, from BIMCO. There are 4 metal mining companies which have produced a position paper, and they have mentioned that they have seen an increase in the usage of electronic bill of lading between 21 and 22 of 80% increase, and they would like to achieve at least 25% by 25. And you mentioned DCSA, the commitment of the shipping world, that they say, okay, in 10 years they would like to achieve 100% usage of electronic bill of lading. So I think that's a rather good achievement. There have been some other achievements, particularly last year in 23, with the creation of the FIT Alliance, alliance between some major stakeholders of the shipping industry, but also ICC and SWIFT is part of it. So particularly if you're looking back into 23, I think there's a lot of things which have happened from the legal standpoint, from the technology aspect. Interoperability, I think we will touch that point later on. So yeah, I think we should see the glass even more than just half full. There are a lot of things which have happened during the recent years.
Yes. So if I may try to summarize, so far we've seen, progress in legal reform, and we all agree legal reform is an essential enabler for trade finance digitalization. But then we also need to progress on the technical aspect of making all these different, let's say, ecosystems that have been built, interoperable. And also, I think it's about standardization of business, of products, of market practices. And here there is also a little of, cultural aspect, in this, that we all should, work together as market participants, to really progress on that. So, but how we can achieve this, because we really need to connect the change, the transformation of the trade finance business to advantages for us, for our organizations, for our clients, for the communities, and the countries we live in and the societies we live in. So, if you allow me, I would like to move more on the benefits of trade finance digitalization topic, and maybe I would start, with you, Sharon, if you want to elaborate on what do you see, with.
So I think it's like one of those things where the benefits are really compelling, right? So it's a question again of why are we not doing that? I mean, I could say I know, going or eating healthily and going is also good for me, but it again means that you have to kind of again that cultural or that overcoming and moving towards that. I think it's compelling for our clients, right? Anything that is taking cost out of the system, that is reducing time, that is allowing us to provide more innovation, that is allowing us to create new value-added solutions, being able to do that with data, be it looking at the supply chain, sustainable supply chain, ESG, all of that requires to stay automated and straight through, requires you to be able to use that data. If you look internally, right, all of us are also under cost pressure. We're all looking at how we can automate our processes. If we also look at our staff, right, all respect, and myself included, this is a very venerable panel, right, of experts. However, right, populations, we need to be able to bring in young people. Young people want the ability, they've grown up in a different way than we have, they want the ability and to understand what they're doing and see that it makes sense. You mentioned controls, right? All of us are under regulatory scrutiny. If we want to be able to show and demonstrate, right, how and where we have those controls, to have evidence to show that we understand, we have traceability, we understand what's happening upstream and downstream from what we're financing or what we're doing, we're all going to have to embrace this. And I kind of like call it for ourselves at Deutsche Bank and our working with fintechs and other things, it's almost like creating that digital core. If you don't have that digital core, how can you collaborate, integrate, interoperate? And all of us need to work together to make that happen. We don't want to do it on our own.
Yeah, absolutely. Francesco, you want to elaborate?
Something more, adding something more regarding you. Yes, we need to collaborate all together because, for example, we work probably with the same fintechs. And sharing among us the experience we had with this fintech in order to come back to the fintech, say, okay, just to improve this point, for example, in the OCR, the artificial intelligence, the project I mentioned before, we are probably at the first stage of this kind of project, and we need to work together in order to reach the results you mentioned before. I need in terms of efficiencies, in terms of cost reductions. We cannot allow in the future, we cannot permit to have hundreds of people working trade finance documents because the numbers of controls are increasing. We need to have to protect those guys and to in the future to have the trade finance world more attractive. As you mentioned, I don't know if young people come and in trade finance teams working trade finance and export letter of credit, handling 100 pieces of paper. We have to move, and we as Intesa Sanpaolo and other banks are moving in these directions. Regarding the customer, I mentioned before the small and medium enterprise. Probably and I'm quite sure that trade digitization will help small and medium enterprise to remain on the market. We can provide to the customer, for example, project like Marco Polo, but other trade finance products that probably will merge and will become something that sounds similar to supply chain finance products, will become more easier, and our customer will understand better in an easier way how this trade finance product will support him in terms of, for example, providing information on country risk, ICC, how to provide a sort of contracts and so on. Those are for us the benefits coming from the trade finance digitization.
What's your view, Joerg, in terms of benefits?
No, I'm just smiling a bit because this point cannot be stressed enough, right? I mean, about young talents and talents with a digital mindset. We all need them desperately in our institutions, and our corporate clients need them as well. And if I look around here, I see some young people. Also cybers in Toronto, and we have to be really we have to be aware of this. Also banks like going through restructuring, and this should not be too much to the disadvantage of young people. Our corporate clients have the same challenges as we have with regard to the age pyramid and workforce being able to process trade finance business manually or with paper. So at one point we need to find a solution, and better faster than later. In terms of benefits, maybe let me just quickly. I'm really happy that this e-bill of lading initiative seems to be kicking off, and DSCA, we are also a member of this, and the FIT Alliance, so Future and Trade Finance, and there seems to be really momentum in the e-bill of lading discussion. And you mentioned the 100% by 2030, which is ambitious. I think the newest, what I've heard, is 25 by 25. So the DSCA is aiming at 25% e-bill of ladings in 2025, which is next year. So, and if we can keep this momentum, if we can overcome these kind of standardization issues and interoperability, I think this would be great. Benefits are manifold. Speed, safer digitally. It is more transparent. It should lower entrance barriers for also SMEs. And yeah.
Thank you, Urs. I think you can, with your unique view on the corporate and correspondent banking.
Everything has said. I cannot agree more, and particularly from the benefit side, you mentioned the financing part for the SMEs. I think that is very important, and the SMEs, their requirement is actually to get financing, to get risk mitigation, and to get some cost reduction. I think those are the three major priorities of the SMEs, and that is where digitalization can actually help, and that's where the effort is. And of course, here there are so many challenges to achieve that. The regulation side, the interoperability, which is a big part where first steps has been done actually also last year. So that is very important to get there finally.
Excellent. So we have some questions coming. Maybe I can pick up some of them in a minute. But we'll discuss about the different initiatives, the benefits out there, and I would really stress the touch point that trade finance digitalization has with sustainable development in many ways. You've discussed, you mentioned several times access, financial inclusion, even when we look at emerging markets and how the sustainability topic is perceived in different ways across the world. I think trade finance digitalization is really something that kind of unite a view even from different areas of the world on how this is supporting on sustainable and economic growth as it supports trade. But let's look at the final part of our panel more on the call to action. We heard from John a very already strong call to action at the beginning to support law reforms with policymakers. I would like maybe to have a quick round from you. I mean, what do you see in terms of impact with policymakers? We as part of business participants that can cooperate, can work together to make a difference, and maybe even on the technology side, if there is anything that we can do together. I can start with you, maybe Francesco, and have a quick.
So we can work together. It's important things that trade digitization will probably in the future will lower, as said before, and will transform this market more democratic in terms of use of products, trade finance products used by small and medium enterprises. So yes, we are strongly, as Intesa Sanpaolo, we are asking internally, as said before, to create a working group, because the more we are, the better will be the result to work together. Interrupting, this morning I said something that sounds like that in order to work together. Fintech, banks, other actors in trade finance, we have lots of actors working together in order to have this world change. Probably the trade finance is the most important market worldwide, and if you know, this market is mainly based on paper. I'm saying something that is, but it's true. It's how we are working this market. So the more we are in terms of banks, ICC, BAFT, ITFA, and all the others actors in this market, the better will be the results.
Thank you, Francesco. Sharon, what is your call for action?
My call for action, well, one call for action actually would be in Germany, that they include the promissory note and bill of exchange. And don't leave that out. At the moment, German law allows for transport documents, but it does not yet allow for the bill of exchange, insurance certificates, and a promissory note. So that actually, I think, is where we need a call of action. Otherwise, you start to get not a level playing field. And that's my first call of action. My second, actually, is I do think there are, like you said, where we are working or looking at fintechs, be it now in Germany, we are looking at a digital vault service with a fintech. We're looking at working with Comgo, right? All of us where we're working together, where we start to see how do we make all of those things so that we're not having to, all of us go through the VRM, all of us go through all of those other things that it takes to implement and put something on board, where we can work together, even if we get electronic input, right? We're able, supply chain is already working on APIs and other things. Even if I get all of that information in electronically to be able to process, I have my upfront processes that I need to make more efficient and streamlined too, right? I'm doing the KYC, I'm doing the onboarding, I'm collecting other things. How can we see and how we make those pieces a lot easier? And where does it make sense to have utilities or not have utilities? I think there needs to be a bit more of an open conversation. And then it's kind of, I think, like we said at the very beginning in that framework, if we cannot, you cannot move forward without that as well push from the bottom, right? You need the push from the top and you need the push from the bottom. Right? We should take the lessons learned, but we should still keep pushing from the bottom.
Yeah, I would focus, or I would refer to two areas which I think have to go hand in hand. And one is the standardization, regulation, and of course interoperability. We have in the, I think we have 8 now solution providers for the electronic bill of lading. The e-bill of lading itself is not standardized yet. and there's no coherent transfer possible between those providers, different platforms. And of course, that's an obstacle. That's an obstacle for further digitalization. And so it's very good that these initiatives are ongoing. Also the DSI, so the Digital Standardization Initiative, ICC, where I think most of our banks are active in, that's necessary. But on the same hand, we need more users on those platforms. And if I look at a typical innovation cycle where we have innovators, there you're at the beginning of the curve, then you have innovators, you have early adopters, you have an early majority, and then you're reaching the top of the curve, and then it's going down. We are still, in my opinion, we are still at the innovator stage, so at the very beginning of the curve. And in order to, I mean, you need lighthouse projects, you need large companies, and I compare this a bit with the Supply Chain Act, where, I mean, you need, where probably the buyers were driving behavior change, and also were just requesting that certain changes have to be adopted. And here, I think also, and therefore, I'm quite happy that the DSCA, that there are 9 of the largest 10 shipping companies of the world are establishing this group. But we need more innovators, we need more lighthouse projects together with standardization.
And horizontal.
Urs. Yeah, so closing the round, I think. Yes, I think for me the key point is certainly interoperability, not only because I work for SWIFT, but I think interoperability is certainly one key. You mentioned the 8 or 10 e-bill of lading provider, and I just see it also from the bank, Sharon, you mentioned Congo, DVS, and so on. So what I see actually is that the banks are more and more forced to adopt more and more platforms. So what we had in the past as a multi-banking issue is becoming a multi-portal issue, more and more for the banks. So we need somehow a standard for APIs, for the messaging, and so on. Regulation has been said as well. I see a lot of things which needs to be done, certainly on an institutional level with everybody, back office systems which are out of date, which can, even if you would have the data, how you deal with the data, how you operate with the data is one thing. And then just to comment on your point, Sharon, that the push has to come from the bottom. We have to generate the push somehow. So we have to generate the demand with an offering at the end. So it has to go somehow hand in hand. And that is, I think, where the challenge is.
Yeah, I think I would pick up the first question, which I think is really very important. And there are some of the lessons learned from what the industry has done in the past few years. I mean, how can we persuade our clients and partners to use digital trade? I mean, if it goes down to onboarding clients, it has to be simple, and there has to be advantage for them. I don't know, maybe anyone want to add anything here?
Probably at this point, making the life of the exporter, importer, whatever, easier in terms of using different platforms. Having at the end, probably now we are in this part of the curve, probably at the first stage of development, but having in the future the interoperability, having the fact that from the customer side, my experience is that every platform means cost. I mean, I'm talking about Congo or MT798 or GT or whatever other third-party platform. They means customer. They means cost for customer, and on the other hand for banks. So having at the end of the day, for example, could be one platform or the platform that can talk together with each other. Then will create for the customer the attract more than now the possibility to handle, and the benefits at the end of the day will be for all the actors in this process in terms of cost and increase the use of digital trade documents.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of self-criticism also from banks. No, it's not just about making our process better. This is very important.
For the clients.
But we haven't been so good in
correct.
bringing.
No, for me, it's how do you make that easy? How do you make it easy to integrate, right? It should not be that an implementation can take a certain amount of months, sometimes as long as a pregnancy, We need to get to the point where it's easy to be able to integrate, and that means looking at solutions like APIs, but that means the standards, that means the interoperability. You don't want to do that 6 or 7 times. And most probably we haven't put as much effort as we should in that. I think that's where in the supply chain field or the receivables, there's been more effort on that, be it ERP systems, looking end to end. How do we do that across the supply chain?
Yeah. And I think once we start, reasoning about data and not documents anymore, it's when we really shift the mentality, and we also identify the business potential, huge business potential for us as bankers, because we need to make money, as I think it was said earlier in the day, but also for our clients, to embrace the new technology. What's your view on this?
Definitely. Yeah, I think many things have been said, and when I look at, there are some platforms which seem to be really driven also by customer demand, which is good. Others were a bit more on the innovative side, and here it was just too complex, and clients were very interested at the very beginning, and then they realized, okay, there is no, it depends, four-corner model, for example, it's just a bit too complicated to onboard these parties. But evolution is happening. It is not that there is no standstill. We are moving, I believe, in the right direction. Obviously, data is a incredible asset for banks in the future, already today. Offers also huge opportunities for us as institutions here to work with those data. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. It will take time. Urs said it also. I'm hoping that SWIFT will play an active role in supporting standardization, because I think this is where SWIFT is really good at also, and that SWIFT will, with the new strategy, also focus continuously on trade finance. I think there are good signs or signals from SWIFT as well.
Excellent. Urs, you want to add final thought?
Yeah, just one last sentence, because 1 minute. I have my personal quote, which I think I had it already some years in an article. It's from Friedrich Dürrenmatt, which says, you never should forget to imagine how the world would be the best. And I think that counts for digital trade. Nothing more to say.
John, a final word from you.
Thank you very much. I obviously agree with almost everything, absolutely everything that's been said from the floor. Could I just add 2 things in response to a couple of the questions that had been raised? Firstly, to really push for this, we need to socialize the benefits, get everyone to understand the benefits. You've heard them here, and here the role of BAFT is, I think, keenly important, and I'm really grateful that BAFT is placing so much emphasis on this topic. Secondly, we've spoken of governments more in terms of the change to laws that they need to make, and it's true, they need to make them where they haven't been done. But more importantly, governments have the power to bring people together. If the government asks the industry XYZ to come in and see them, are you going to say no? You're not. They have a convening power, and therefore each government should be persuaded by you. Go back to your countries and persuade your government. Look, why don't we put together the sorts of initiatives that have been discussed here? And you, the government, lead from the top. There needs to be a leadership from the top, because if you only just look at the legislative history in the United Kingdom, why do you think the UK government pushed for this? Well, they think because they can maintain their preeminence of English law in trade documentation. Duh, they saw it in their interest to do this. But it's also in the interests of other governments to do this, to encourage their domestic export, import industries. So I would strongly suggest also that governments be seen not as a blockage, but rather as a facilitator.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think you are seeing in certain, with e-invoicing, right, at the moment, the German government as well, they wanted to do January 2025. They're now coming with a proposal in 2 phases, but by 2027, it's going to be e-invoicing. Those are the initiatives as well that I think actually facilitate change. What I meant, top, bottom.
All right, so you can tell, here on stage you have, industry experts, but I hope we've transmitted also our engagement, commitment, and drive, to change. I think, we all need to feel the same as part of the industry, to really move things forward. So with that, I think we are finished for today. Thank you. Thank you, panelists.